This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
Body Bags with Joseph Scott Morgan. Having for the better part of my adult life been married to a public educator, one thing I've come to realize is that if you can find a really good math teacher, that's somebody that you need to hold on to in the public education system. Because math is not something that most people warm up to. It's not something that people say, gee, I want to take as many math classes as I can in high school, including AP and all those sorts of things. Most people are scared of math. It comes through all the time. I hear it at college even, with my students. But there was a math teacher in Danvers, Massachusetts, back in 2013. She was only in her mid-20s. She was bright. She was in a position where she was attempting to teach her students about the complexities of math and the functions. But unfortunately for her, this young lady would never finish out her career because at the age of 24 years old, she was attacked, raped, and murdered within the walls of her own school. I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags. Have you ever had that moment where you're talking to somebody, and the term trigger gets used a lot nowadays, and I don't put as much stock in it as many people do, because if you look for things to be triggered by, you're going to find them. Trust me.
At the end of the school day, Colleen Ritzer was meeting with Phillip Chism and another student, and they were talking. The other student was there for help with math, and I don't know if Chism was there for help with math or whatever, but Colleen Ritzer was not discussing algebra with them right off the bat. She was connecting with these students, 14-year-old Phillip Chism and this other student who has remained anonymous all throughout. But she told us, this unnamed student said that while they were both there after school for a little help with the algebra class they were dealing with, Colleen Ritzer was talking to them about personal stuff and actually mentioned the state of Tennessee. See, Phillip Chism at 14 had only recently moved to Danvers, Massachusetts. He had come from Tennessee. His mother and father divorced in Tennessee. They had a very difficult marriage, a lot of accusations. But finally, Phillip Chism's mother decided to leave Tennessee and move to Massachusetts with her son, Phillip, and daughter. They settled into a small basement apartment, and Phillip was not happy with it, apparently, because while he was at this after-school help session, and apparently, according to the other student that was there, she saw a change in Phillip Chism immediately. And it took a minute for the teacher to pick up on it. And she stopped talking about Tennessee. But Phillip Chism, the other student said, really shut down and started talking to himself, saying words to himself out loud that this other student, she was impacted by it.
For this set of circumstances, if you have this, and particularly if you're, I'm thinking about this through the eyes of an investigator, but if you have that moment in time where you get this kind of brooding, dark, malevolent kind of presence that's there almost out of nowhere, she recognized this and she changed subjects at that point in time. And I think, some people do things, I think, in communications with folks, and they don't care what they say or how the individual reacts. They'll just completely bulldoze over them and completely talk about this thing that's irritating somebody. Maybe they're doing it to be mean-spirited, or maybe they're doing it because they have no self-awareness. But in this particular case, I think that this was kind of what do they call it, a portent of things to come. And it happened, Dave, in the flash of in a twinkling of the eye, essentially, where this thing really went from 0 to 60 in just a very short period of time.
Phillip Chism, the 14-year-old, accused of murdering and raping and robbing his 24-year-old algebra teacher after school. They were trying to find a motive. I'm thinking it had to have been a big moment for her to realize what had taken place, because, again, the teacher stops talking about Tennessee, changes the subject, but Phillip is stuck. Phillip Chism is stuck in that rut right then and remains in that rut and doesn't get out of it. And how important is a motive to an investigation?
I think to the extent where I'm speaking only on my behalf here. I can't speak to any colleagues or former colleagues and that sort of thing, or even the people I teach. For me, I liked to have an idea of motive because it would give me an opportunity to have another perspective on the scene and how I'm going to interpret that scene. And listen, the thing about it is motives are highly subjective, because anybody, we were talking about being triggered a moment ago. Well, pick your poison here. What were you triggered by today that set you off to conduct this kind of violence or act this way? And it could vary from one day to the next. Is that the motive? Is it triggering a motive, or is it something that's really deeper? Could it have anything to do with maybe you've got a young man that just hates women, and that's certainly a potential. Maybe he hates authority figures. Maybe it's something to do with race. Maybe it's something to do with coming from the South and he goes to the North and he holds some kind of animosity about that. Maybe the fact that he probably speaks with maybe a Southern accent and he shows up there. And I love my friends in Massachusetts. I love and I could just sit back for hours and listen to them talk. One of my favorite colleagues that I work with he's a former Boston police officer, and I'd give him $5 just to say stuff, to read, because he's so fascinating to listen to. But you never know what's going to set anybody off, and that, Dave, is why that makes this all the more ominous, because you never know. You never know what's waiting for you around the next bend, even in a public restroom. To say that the murder, Colleen Ritzer, to say that it's brutal is kind of an understatement. It's one thing for someone to be murdered in some obscure location that is kind of out of sight. It could even be a private home. I think one of the things that kind of sends a chill up your spine with this particular case is that anybody, and I mean anybody, could have walked in during the commission of these deeds.
Anybody did.
You're right. And boy, we're really, I think, Dave, very fortunate that we're not talking about a double homicide here.
Hey, one little thing to add to this, Joe. She lives at home with her mom and dad because she's also working on getting her master's degree. This is, and Colleen Ritzer, she was this kind of person who lit up a room. Most of the faculty and students who talked about her said they never saw her where she wasn't smiling.
Yeah, and she's got this beautiful, big smile. She has that appearance, a big, beautiful smile, and she just looked like somebody that would, readily engage with you and chat with you.
Breaking down the timeline, Joe. 2:54 p.m. Colleen Ritzer is going to use the restroom, but the faculty restroom is busy, so she uses the students' restroom on the second floor. At 2:55, 1 minute later, Phillip Chism, 14-year-old, wearing gloves and a red hoodie, pulled over his head, enters that same restroom. He follows her into the restroom. By the way, we have all this on video. So surveillance videos throughout the school help us with this timeline, and that's why we can tell you what he was wearing when he went in.
I got to say, before you go any further, these screen captures in this case are chilling. I know I keep using the word chilling. They are absolutely chilling, because I think that you and I, as you previously mentioned, Dave, can identify with this environment, this public school environment. And when you see this going on and you know the story behind it, oh boy.
Yeah. So 2:54, she goes in the bathroom. 2:55, he's right behind her. At 3:06, in the middle of everything horrible you can imagine, a female student enters the bathroom, and on video, we don't know what she sees. We just know that she walks into the bathroom and immediately, quickly walks right back out. Later on, we find out she tells investigators that she saw the back of a person who appeared to be changing clothes. The person's rear area was exposed, and clothes were piled on the floor. A minute later, 3:07, Chism is seen leaving the restroom. 3:22. Now, Chism is walking back and forth. He's in and out of the room several times. He is seen coming back to the restroom with a recycling barrel. At 3:22, Chism leaves the restroom pulling the barrel. This time, he's got a black mask on his forehead. I want to point something out here. While we have video of all of these things, we only have video of Colleen Ritzer entering the bathroom. We do not have video of Colleen Ritzer leaving the bathroom.
Bad sign. Really bad sign. Yeah.
Chism is on video pulling the barrel outside. He pulls it towards the student parking lot. Investigators say there is what appears to be bloodstains near the bathroom in the video. They also say there are what appear to be bloodstains on Chism's pants in the video. 3:30 in the afternoon. A parent of a student sees Phillip Chism running away from the school. The reason this comes up is because Phillip Chism didn't go home after school. And his mom starts calling around looking for him. His mom ends up coming to the school. Can't find him anywhere. She finally calls police at 6:34 to report Phillip Chism is missing. He went to school this day. He didn't come home. In the meantime, Colleen Ritzer, her parents also were worried, and they come to the school. You know, her car's still in the parking lot. They're trying to retrace final footsteps, and they report her missing later on. Now, here's the kick, Joe. At 9:00 that night, the high school principal actually sends out a mass email to high school staff and parents. Hey, we've got a 14-year-old student who's missing. After that email comes out, everybody's, hey, wait a minute, we got a teacher missing too. So if you can imagine, in this very small community, Joe, you know, there were a lot of rumors.
Oh, you're absolutely right. And, fear begins to settle in, and you begin to think about, well, first off, teachers just don't vanish off the face of the planet,
Right.
Particularly when they're attached to the community like this. And one of the things that we look for in investigations has anybody that is part of the principal investigation deviated from any of their normal day-to-day activities? Like, was it within the realm of possibility that she would not make contact with her parents? Is it within the realm of possibility she would not go back to her apartment within their home? Is it within the realm of possibility that she would leave her car at the school and not attend? Would she just wander off?
By the way,
yeah, go ahead.
Us running the timeline, take all that away from what everybody in the community knows. All they know, they don't know the timeline we just broke down. All they know is a 14-year-old student never made it home from school. And then later that evening, wait a minute, his math teacher didn't return home from school either. And then another math teacher who is friends with Colleen tells the principal, hey, Phillip was in her classroom today. And they start putting all this together. And thankfully, they had the video. Thankfully, they have surveillance cameras, or we wouldn't know a lot of what we know.
Yeah, we would have no idea. And this is in the early days of kind of digital technology and digital sleuthing. And, they were able to, the authorities were able to actually, ping both of their phones. And what was fascinating about this is that with Colleen, they pinged her phone, and the last known location was approximating, the school. But for Chism, they had pinged his phone, and it was last seen or last pinged in the vicinity of Hollywood Hits Theater, a movie theater, Dave. Several hours later.
Not even in Danvers. It was in a community that it wasn't like right down the street. This was in a different community, a little ways away.
And he had bolted, to that location for whatever reason. I don't know. I mean, you're talking about the brain of a 14-year-old.
Right.
I think probably one of the things that we have to return to here when you have a case like this and you have evidence of violence, certainly in this bathroom, you've got significant deposition of blood, lying about in the bathroom. That that the individual that is eventually discovered and found, Chism, he's got blood stains on him, after all these hours. And one of the things that you're looking at here, with a crime scene like this, is something that we refer to, and let me break these down for us. We've got the primary crime scene. Most of the time in death investigation, we consider a primary crime scene as to where the body is actually located. Some people will deviate from that and they'll say where the action actually took place. But for me, everything is eccentric to the body. So if you have a location where the body is, that's where you're going to set up as your primary location or your primary crime scene. And then because you've got so much movement with this case, you've got a secondary crime scene, okay, which might yield a lot of evidence at that location, but you're not going to have the body, the corpus delicti at that moment in time. And then you'll have things like tertiary crime scenes. So if you've got, say, some kind of vessel or vehicle that has transported a body somewhere and it's found in another location, that would be a tertiary crime scene. People throwing clothing out of a car as they're going down the road. Those items left behind on the roadside are not the primary crime scene, but yet they're valuable, and that would be a tertiary crime scene. But in this case, Dave, something that's very ominous is that in one of the clips, you can see Chism pulling a garbage can as he's leaving the building, and he disappears into a wooded area. And later on, that's where Colleen is actually found. Going back years and years, compared those years to where we are now in investigations, and I began to think about, wow, if I'd only had that technology way back then, if my colleagues that were in law enforcement that were all about trying to locate individuals, particularly suspects in crimes, if they had only had the technology we have today. In this particular case, Dave, we've got a phone that is pinging that belongs to Phillip Chism. And what a big break in the case this was.
Well, they were able to, as you mentioned earlier, get it at this place called Hollywood Hits Theater, where they have his phone ping there, and he bought a ticket. But they also say he didn't stay for the movie. He bought the ticket, but he left the theater. He was found. Now, that was 11:30 or so. At 12:30 in the morning, he's walking down the road, and they are looking for him. There is now a 14-year-old missing. They've got the bolo out. Be on the lookout. And when they stop him, they find out that, hey, this is the 14-year-old we're looking for. Well, as they check him out, they find out he has a knife on him. But when they look in his backpack, that's when police realize they've got a problem here. Police find a blood-stained box cutter. When they ask him, hey, where did the blood come from? Allegedly, he said, the girl. Chism is also carrying Colleen Ritzer's driver's license and credit cards. and has a pair of blue and green women's underwear. When he's asked, hey, where did you get this stuff? He said that he found the items at a gas station. That's what he said at first. Of course, they didn't believe him and they pushed harder. And that's when he later said that he took them, her driver's license, credit cards, and underwear from her car. And that's when they arrested him.
Still, Colleen Ritzer is missing. And Dave, it wasn't until, I don't know, I guess after daybreak the next morning where her body is actually found just off school grounds or immediately adjacent to school grounds.
Near where they saw him dragging that tub.
It's a big wheeled garbage can is actually what it is. It's the same thing that for those of us that live in urban areas, you drag your garbage out to the curb and the sanitation people come by and pick it up and you retrieve it. It looks just like that. It's the same thing. And certainly could accommodate a human remain very easily. And, if you see somebody pulling this thing, listen, the first thing that you're going to think of is, gee, I wonder if he's got a dead body in there. It's not, and the guy's just like walking down the sidewalk. And what's really interesting is one of the screenshots they've got of him pulling this garbage can is there's another individual walking in front of him that's completely unaware of what's going on at that moment in time. You just see this young man pulling a garbage can, taking it out to this location. And, videography played a key role in this all the way along. And isn't it weird? This is all the way back all those years ago, Dave. And, now, we'll still have problems with videography, CCTV, where we can't make out detail. And man, I got to tell you, you can make out every single detail in this case relative to, these kind of electronic breadcrumbs that are being left behind.
All I could think of was whoever set that up. Boy, oh boy, if I'm hiring security for my school, that's who I'm hiring, that company.
Yeah. And they, they were, in that sense, they were able to get a hold of this. And what a valuable piece of evidence to have if you're a prosecutor and you're moving forward with this. It's really hard to stare this down and deny that you were having physical contact with her because, I go back to, you remember what I was saying about the crime scene. This is a very bloody affair, Dave, because as it turns out, this is
go back to when they found her body.
Yeah,
they found her body right there in the brushes on school property, and her body had been covered with leaves.
Yes.
And the video that you and I have already talked about, investigators find that, and that helps them put everything together. And I don't know how quickly they watched the video. I'm going to assume it was very early on.
Pretty doggone quickly, because they're looking for this teacher, and they got this kid wandering around.
Yeah, he's got her ID, credit cards, and a bloody box cutter. This is not going to end well.
No, it's not. And in addition to that, he's got blood on his pants.
Oh, I forgot about that. I forgot.
And so it's really hard to kind of separate these things out. And the fact that, initial reports when they came out regarding this, it said that Colleen had her throat cut, but that's really soft pedaling this thing.
It's a lot more to that, right? How was her body positioned when they found her body under the leaves and everything else? How was she positioned? What did the police see when they found her?
Yeah, when they found her, she was in this very provocative positioning, and they have framed this as saying she was sexually positioned, which in cases involving females like this, you've got they're posed so that their genitalia is readily visible. And, having worked cases involving sexual predators, and I got to say, I think that this kid probably is. I don't know if this was just something that was burgeoning within him at this point in time, or if he had previous experiences, maybe exposure, maybe inappropriate touching, this sort of thing. And it escalated to this point because it was an opportunistic thing. And here's another piece to this. They found him with a box cutter, Dave. And I'm thinking, why do you have a box cutter with you at school? Why are you carrying this thing with you? Were you looking for an opportunity to assault someone? And you have this excuse. Remember, we were talking about the triggering thing where, she had mentioned his former home state of Tennessee. And now he has an excuse to move forward with maybe this fantasy that he has. But I can tell you this, he had made an effort to conceal her body. And it's much more horrible, I think, that what he did with her, that gives me an indication that this is not maybe a one-off event, because after he had literally killed her in that bathroom, Dave, he stabbed her multiple times in the throat with a box cutter, which is not, it's not like being stabbed with a knife. It is kind of shallow, if you will, because, box cutter only, it's maybe an inch and a half in depth, the blade itself. Very sharp point, sharp edge that dulls very quickly, but he cut her throat in addition to that. So that's going to take her out. But in the midst of this, there's a sexual assault going on inside of a women's stall in this bathroom that's open to the public. That child that walked in there, that's why I was saying she really dodged a bullet with this thing, because this guy was ripping this poor teacher to shreds in there. But it gets worse, because after he had transported her body out to this location, he actually left behind two significant pieces of evidence. And those bits of evidence, first off, he took a stick and assaulted her again in her post-mortem state. So this is literally the abuse of a corpse at this point in time. So much so that he left this stick in place, that when the medical examiner went to examine her remains, they had to remove it at autopsy. Just let that kind of seep into the groundwater there and begin to think about that. But also one other thing that he left behind that is real telltale here. He left a note that was immediately adjacent to her body. And the note was simply written out. It said, "I hate you all." Now, I don't know if we had, forensic psychologists on here with us or whatever. Maybe they could read a lot into that. I don't need a psychology degree, to kind of assess this and begin to think. There's a lot of anger that's tied up in this, a lot of psychopathology that's tied into this. And poor Colleen happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Maybe he had targeted her. Maybe for some reason he had decided that she was representative of everything that he hated about his life or whatever. Because, it's rote for people to say, well, sexual assault and rape are not a sexual event. It's a power event where you're in control. And he would have been in total control. This poor woman with this beautiful smile that wanted to help kids learn probably one of the most complex things that you can learn at this level in school. And she's taking time. And Dave, he ripped her to shreds.
Joe, there was something that was added to that. They said that he folded the note, folded in such a way that it wasn't just laying out there. I wonder about that. What, if any, did that have? But they talked about the change of clothes that he had with him that day, and this so-called triggering of this, talking about the state of Tennessee. Well, I'm thinking, if he had planned all this ahead of time, Joe, to have a change of clothes. When I was 14, I didn't have a change of clothes.
Lord, no.
I would never have done that. That wouldn't be part of my regular day.
I remember several occasions I forgot my dress out clothes, that you have to have for PE or whatnot. You're a 14-year-old boy. Boys do that. We're idiots at that age.
He was planning. He had to.
He was planning, and he's got the box cutter. I guess some people would say, in his defense, well, he's in a new environment. He felt threatened in this environment to the degree that you're going to bring a sharp instrument to school. And I can't imagine under any circumstances that this young teacher was threatening him. As a matter of fact, she was trying to help him. In the end, the conclusion that was arrived at was that he destroyed her life. And I would submit to you that he destroyed or damaged severely a lot of the lives of the people in that school moving forward. This is something that no one is ever going to forget that was at that school at that period of time. Anytime you drive by that school and you're a former student there or whatever the case might be, maybe you occupy a home that's immediately adjacent to that location. You look across the street and you think about what happened. It's forever scarred that community. But what eventually happens to him? Please tell me that he's now behind bars.
He was convicted. He was tried as an adult. He was 14 when this happened, 17 when he was convicted, and he was sentenced 25 years for the murder, 40 years and 1 day for raping and robbing Colleen Ritzer. The sentence is to be served concurrently. He will not be eligible for parole until the 40 years has been served. So he'll be 54 before he has a chance to walk free.
Many people think, you're 14 years old. How can you be held responsible as an adult for these actions that you took all those years ago? I think the question to that should be, how could you not hold him responsible for the destruction and the desecration of Colleen? I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.